Question number 8, Alfred Ngaro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister for Building and Housing, how does the number of homes consented in the last quarter of 2008 compare with the last quarter of 2015?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the pace of new home construction has more than doubled nationally and more than trebled in Auckland. The exact numbers nationally, yes, it was a very low base under Labor, I accept that. The exact numbers was that in the last quarter of the previous government, 3,468 homes were built. In the last quarter of 2015, 7,718. The comparisons in Auckland was that 763 homes were consented in the last quarter of 2008 as compared with 2,718 in the last quarter of 2015. The pace of new home builds is at the highest for more than a decade.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Alfred Ngaro.
What are the latest annual reports on home building numbers and values in Auckland, and how have they changed since the government entered into the Auckland Housing Accord?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the number of new house builds has gone in Auckland from 3,700 in 2012 up to 4,600, then up to 6,300, and last year 9,250. This is an annual growth rate of between 20% and 30% in every year since the Auckland Accord was signed. The level of investment has grown from $1.6 billion per year in the period around 2008 to now over $3.8 billion a year in Auckland. If we look at the number of people employed in the building and construction sector in Auckland, last year it grew by 31% in a single year, or an additional 20,000 additional tradespeople building homes in Auckland.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Alfred Ngaro.
What reports has the Minister received on future home build rates in Auckland, and what measures is the government taking this year to maintain this momentum?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the National Construction Pipeline report that's produced independently is projecting an additional 80,000 new homes being built in Auckland over the next 6 years. That compares to only 30,000 over the preceding 6 years, and gives me optimism that we are successfully addressing the issues of supply. The next steps in our reform program are the changes to the Resource Management Act, completing the unitary plan for Auckland, developing a national policy on urban development, and developing into housing blocks those quite large numbers of surplus Crown lands that have sat around for decades.
Supplementary question, Dr David Clark.
Does the Minister accept that the housing situation has worsened, according to the statistics, since the period of the global financial crisis 8 years ago that he quotes from in his initial question? And if so, does he further accept that 8 years on, people still cannot live in consent?
No, quite the opposite.
The Honourable Dr.
If you look at all of the core stats around housing, the number of houses that are being built in Auckland is 3 times the number from when Labor left government. The number nationally is double. If we look at the number of homes that have been insulated, that number is over 300,000. In fact, in the years of this John Key government, we will make more progress on insulating older homes than any government in the history of New Zealand. And I'd also draw to the members' attention the housing affordability data from Massey University that shows even in Auckland that it's more affordable for housing today because interest rates are of course at a 40-year low, and nothing makes a bigger difference for Kiwi families wanting to buy their own home than the level of interest rates they're paying.
Question number 9,